So when we're shifting out of a matrix of lack and into a matrix of abundance, there's a lot that happens. Essentially, it's a death process because all that programming that we had that kept us in that belief system and in that matrix is starting to die off, is starting to be reprogrammed, is starting to be upgraded. But there's just the very real human experience of that upgrade because we are not computers, we are humans, we are living beings. And much of the processes that the world has given us, especially in the last 2,000 years of programming, is very linear. It's very ABC, it's very get to point A to point B. And it's very direct, so to speak, which can be very helpful, and obviously it works. Like there's a direct method to things, and that is valuable. But there is also, just as importantly and just as potently and just as powerfully, the other side of creation, which can look like destruction. It can look like chaos. It can feel like it doesn't have any structure or any linear motion, and it moves from a different space. It's directed and guided by love or by desire. And those desires can be for good or for ill, but nonetheless, that is also part of the creation process. And anyone who's ever been really successful, regardless of the tips that they used and the formula they finally found to put their success in a process that made them residual income so that they became wealthy, the process of them becoming wealthy wasn't about that formula. It was about their journey, about what they learned, what they discovered about themselves. And then we eventually always get formulas that help reflect to us how we can make sense, how our experience can make sense, how our the way that we think and feel can make sense to us, especially for those of us, and I know this is true for most empaths, that have felt like we don't belong in this world or have felt like we just do not fit in. And so today I wanted to give you some tips for those of you who are shifting out of the lack matrix and into the abundance matrix and wondering, okay, what do I do for money? What do I do for, like, I know for a fact I don't want to be in the 9-to-5 thing. I know my job is draining me. I know it's not self-sustaining. I know it's not ultimately my highest potential. But how do I get from here to here? And so I wanted to talk about a few processes that have helped me and also help you simplify this, because it's actually, I'm going to share with you kind of what I've done and all the mistakes I've made. And you can even watch it if you go through my YouTube channels back from when I first started to now. I sort of just figured everything out as I went. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a business plan. I wasn't really planning on having a business. All I knew is I had that call, like, you have to do something different. And I knew I just had to take a first step. And honestly, those first several steps, those first couple years were excruciating because it was so uncomfortable and so outside of the programming of those around me. When you're stepping out of a certain matrix, everyone around you that's in that matrix is like, what are you doing? Because it's so different. And natural concerns go off, which makes sense. So I'm going to simplify this for you. I want to give you 3 ways to look at this, and then I want to allow you to have the freedom and the experience to assimilate this in whatever way that resonates with you. So number one of simplifying this whole shift from the lack matrix to the abundance matrix is narrow down what you actually care about. So part of my process was I went through the whole thing that people tell you to do. I went to college. I did go later, but before that, right out of high school, I did the whole 9-to-5 thing, worked in an office job, had several different jobs. Never, and I mean not ever, never felt like I was good at any of those things. I could do it. I was raised with a very strong work ethic, but it just felt so unnatural on every level. And I would cry all the time going to work because I always worked in customer service jobs because I was drawn to people, but I just didn't feel like I was thriving in any way. And granted, there was a lot of other things going on in my life, but nonetheless, when I finally got to the point where I actually started Chakra Center, I was honestly at like a suicidal point in my life, in the sense of I was so done. I had done years of therapy. I had worked through, I felt like from my most human perspective, the best I could of where I was up to that point to make the most sense of my life. I had tried religion. I'd really given it my heart. I even went on a mission with a Christian organization. All I wanted was to feel better. All I wanted was to feel healed, this deeper, deeper wound that I had of not belonging and of feeling like I didn't fit in here. And when I started Chakra Center, I was at that point where I was like, okay, I don't care about anything. I was jaded at that point. And because I had tried everything and nothing seemed to fulfill that deeper longing. Even all the things that people tell you are supposed to, a certain career, having a college degree, having a relationship with Jesus, whatever it is, everyone has their own take on what's going to make you the most happy. And I tried it all. And I ultimately was not satisfied not because any of those things are wrong or bad. It's not about the thing. It was about a deeper need that I had that I wasn't able to even address, because the programming and everything I came with taught me to, or everything I came into, I should say, taught me to tune out of my own personal needs and what I need and my emotional needs and tune in to everyone else. That's how I survived. So this process of coming undone, I had to completely stop that. I had to get to the point where I tuned everyone out. That's all I could do. And I kind of, maybe from the outside, looked like I was becoming very selfish, because I had to get everyone's voice out of my head. I had everyone's voice in my head, knowing that my deepest program is I want to be pleasing to people. I want to do well. I know that when I'm in my most joyful state, I'm very medicinal to people. Like, people just want me around, because I know that I hold that state of heaven within me and that I can easily access it when I allow myself to tune in. And I think we all can, but we're just taught not to. So when I came to Chakra Center, or when I decided to even start a blog, that's all I knew, is I was like, I'm going to start a blog. I was freelance writing at the time because I already knew I absolutely did not want to work at a normal job. And I had even applied for so many jobs that I was overqualified for even, and just nothing. There was nothing coming through. And this was after I'd graduated college. I moved to Italy for 6 months and then came back. And so I just felt like, hey, I have my college degree. I did this, I did that, I did what everyone said. And I just feel like I'm nowhere further ahead than I was in the first place. I'm actually in debt. I feel like I'm starting over. And I didn't regret going to school or doing any of those things. I loved school. I mean, I got an English degree. So, I mean, I was reading books and philosophizing, which was great. But nonetheless, I just felt like I didn't see the purpose of anything I did, and I didn't see how it connected, and I felt so jaded. And all that I knew that I cared about was that saying that there's something messed up about this. Like, that's all the most constant feeling I can say I've always felt from as long as I can remember is something's not right. Something is off with this whole system, and why is everyone acting like this is normal? And not only acting like it's normal, but shaming people who don't do it, and people who are different and express themselves differently and live differently, shaming them, saying that it's wrong or bad, or putting a stigma on it, especially in the culture that I grew up in, which is very much about success and independence and that idealism, which I love, and I've gained a lot of great things from that. But nonetheless, everyone's way of going about success and everyone's definition of success is very different. You cannot have success if you're not meeting your deeper needs, period. And we got off track as a human race, and it became all about materialism. So, all that to say, when I started Chakra Center, all that I knew I cared about was that I needed to speak my experience in this system, and I needed to speak to other people who'd been in this system, who were like me, who didn't fit, and I needed to give that a voice, and I primarily did it for me. It was, I didn't go into Chakra Center with this great love for humanity. I went in with this great jadedness towards humanity, and this sense of like, I know I have hope, and I know there's something else because I've experienced love, and I've experienced deep connection with people, and I know there's something else, and I've had moments of really connecting to who I am and feeling the perfection of this life. I know that it's absolutely possible to live in this body and be in a human limited perspective and actually have joy and actually interact with people in co-creative, interdependent ways that are mutually beneficial rather than competitive ways that discount the heart and the inner needs and make it all about the external. I knew it was possible. And so I just started taking the first step. All I knew is, okay, I need to write about it. I'm a writer, so why don't I write? And I started just writing in general. And I started kind of narrowing topics down. And I started out the way that I thought I should do it. Like, I should do a blog like this, and I should have it be about this. And I eventually really ended up overwhelming myself and realizing I don't want to write about all these things. I don't want to interview all these people. I don't want to make it about anyone else. I want to figure out where am I coming from? And all I could continually come to was this sense of sensitivity and being empathic, feeling everyone. And how do you get out of that? Like, how do you sift through everything you're feeling and still have clarity and still feel yourself and still know what to do, where to move next? Like, where is that space where that energy around you that you're feeling doesn't control you? Where does it actually give you clarity? How can this actually help me? How can I actually be empowered in what I am as someone who's sensitive? Because I know that that's what's caused me to feel jaded about this whole world, the fact that I'm sensitive, because this world is not set up for sensitive people. But also, and what I mean by sensitive is not someone who's highly offended. I want to clarify that, because a lot of people think, oh, if you're sensitive, it means you're easily offended. You can't say anything around them. You have to walk on eggshells. That is not what I mean. I mean sensitive to energy. I mean sensitive to people's emotions. I mean sensitive to the bigger picture of what's going on. Sensitive to vibrations. It's a different thing. It's a different way of navigating. It's not navigating solely through the mind and the matrix itself. So, anyway, the important thing to take away from all this is that when you're starting to step out of the matrix, when you're starting to step out of the matrix of lack and into the matrix of abundance, there's a process of death. And it can feel really uncomfortable. And like I said, the first several years of me doing this kind of work was so uncomfortable for me, because I kept trying to do the program that I was taught to do and to take into my feelings. And it always seemed that's where it was off. And you can ask people who, especially my first round of mentoring, in some ways was a total shit show, because in the terms of organization and the business side, because that's not how my mind works. And my greatest gift is connecting with people one-on-one, working with them, channeling in that way, getting clarity. I can see people's blocks really well. I can connect really well, and I love doing that. Beyond that, all the stuff that I was doing to have a platform to even be able to connect with people really wasn't my forte. So the reason I brought up that longer than intended story about my beginnings is because when you're shifting out of a matrix of lack into a matrix of abundance, it's important that you narrow down what you actually care about. Because in order to get into a matrix of abundance, you have to know what you actually want, and you have to, as directly as you can, meet those needs and include those needs in whatever you're creating. You also have to keep in mind that there's a transition period, and that it is probably not realistic for you to go from the old matrix straight into the abundance matrix and instant success overnight. That happens to some people, and what I mean by success is feeling completely safe and harmonized in the abundance matrix, feeling like you have what you need when you need it, that you're not obligated to give your life force or your energy to demands outside of you that have nothing to do with your true desires. That's what I consider abundance to be, is being in service to your own heart and your own dream, not the dreams of others and not the heart of others. Although it should be connected, because in order for you to thrive, the planet needs to thrive and others need to thrive as well. So all that to say, narrow it down to what you actually care about. So for me, when I got to that point where I was like, hey, I don't know what I actually necessarily care about in terms of specifically how I could make that into something that I make money off of, which is what the world tells you to do. But I knew what I didn't care about. And I knew absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, regardless of how upset it would have made people, and regardless of how sometimes self-conscious I felt about coming out in that way, I knew I did not want to support that way of living anymore. I knew I was a hypocrite if I continued to spend my energy in those wheels of slavery and say no that this exists and believe deep down in my heart that it exists and have experienced it and then not live it. It just made no sense to me. But I was so angry that in my transition period has been, how do you address the needs of people who don't fit into this? And so I started speaking to that part of me, and that's where I started getting a resonance back on the grid. People started every time I would talk about empaths or being sensitive or shadow work, those three topics, I would get a bunch of people that would be like, whoa, thank you. And I remember one time I wrote an article, and I was very jaded too. I was in kind of an angry, like that righteous anger space. But I wrote an article called Empaths Forgot Their Power. And it's all about, because I felt angry even at us, honestly, at empaths for getting so deeply into that programming and then staying in it, like being so addicted to it, like forgetting that they have access to a whole other way of being and that they don't have to follow those programs. So I posted that article, and I think it's been shared on Facebook like 5,000 times or something. And for me, I know that's not a big deal for a lot of huge publications, but for me, I was like, wow, that put something out, that was huge. And so I realized I'm not the only one that feels this way, and I'm not the only one that even resonates with this anger. And then I started connecting with empaths, and empaths started saying, can you work with me? Do you have classes? Can I pay you to work with me? I want to work with you privately. And that's kind of how it started happening. It kind of made itself known to me. But even within that, I had to still define my boundaries. I had to figure out what worked for me. I originally approached it like, again, I was told to approach it, or how the world teaches you to approach things, because that's how we were programmed. And so I've had to really work my way and dwindle it down and figure out what I actually want. And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about, because if I can save you the misery of having to go through what I went through, which is constantly testing, just doing things because you think you're supposed to, and then realizing, oh, that's not what I actually wanted. How do I refine it? And then refining it and making it new. This process is invaluable. But what's also invaluable is when people go before you, when they leave you tips so that you have new tools and you can work through it much faster. And that is, in fact, why the planet is shifting so fast right now, because more of us are getting it. More of us are getting the bigger blueprint of how this whole thing works. And as we upload it into the human consciousness field, more and more people get it very fast. So anyway, one of the things that I realized was my biggest block was technology. And this is so true for most empaths that I've talked to anyway. Empaths that are working with me or attracted to my work have said to me, I feel like I want to talk about this. I want to teach. Most of us are natural healers and teachers. So it makes sense that you'd be drawn to wanting to talk about those interests that are coming alive in you. And they say in order to master something, teach it. So it makes complete sense. However, most of us have this block to technology because we're not used to allowing people to see us this deeply, and especially allowing people to see this part of our hearts or this part of who we are. A lot of times it's a place we've kept so secret because we've been told that it doesn't matter, or it's stupid, or people just don't get it, or whatever it is. It's just something that we've kept hidden. And so the idea of coming out is very scary. And I remember once my business coach told me that a technology block is an abundance block. And that made so much sense to me, because technology is symbolic of evolution, of growth, of expansion. In and of itself, it's not bad or good. It has both attributes. It can just look at the internet. It can provide people freedom and liberation and information, but it can also give people misinformation and access to pornography and child slavery and all these things that we don't want to be a part of, that I think most of humanity doesn't want to support, and yet it's in our face. Here it is. And that's the beauty of what the internet, or even the symbol of this way of connecting with each other around the world, how close we actually are, how alike we actually are, how dark we actually are, how light we actually are. It needed to be seen because we were all operating under a facade. And so, as you come into your gifts, and as you figure out how do I move from the lack matrix into the abundance matrix, it's an inward process. You are going to have to get in touch with what your actual unmet needs are. That's why you're miserable in the lack matrix, is because you have deeper needs that are unmet. So in order to feel abundant, you need to find out what those deeper needs are, and you need to meet them as directly and as powerfully as you can, as you're able to. And as you start allowing yourself to meet your needs, you'll start developing trust with yourself, and you'll start knowing how to refine it and really fine tune how to meet your needs. And that's where the internet comes in. And this is what I wanted to talk about because, like I said, this is a huge block for most empaths. And we think, okay, I need to jump on YouTube, I need to make YouTube, it's going to go viral, or whatever it is. Or I need to do the whole mentoring thing and charge like a ton of money, or I need to charge classes. And believe me, I've tried it all. And some have worked and some haven't. But what I've learned, that regardless of what formula I use, I have to know what I really want. And this was key for me when I realized I don't want to reach tens of millions of people. I want to reach the people I'm meant to reach. I don't want to connect intimately with tens of millions of people. I want to connect with 5. I want to have people that I work with intimately, who I share my heart with, who I actually give this most sacred part of me, which is part of my healing gifts, I want it to be one-on-one. And because for me, that makes me feel safe, and I had that need. And so some people get online and they share their whole lives and expose their whole selves, and that serves them and that helps them. But I realized that is not what I needed, and that is not what I want. So I had to go through some vulnerable spaces to realize it's okay for me to just give myself what I need. And actually, I'm way more effective when I do that, because that's where my heart is and that's where I thrive. So when I've worked with clients one-on-one, it's always, to me, so invigorating, because it's so intimate, and connecting with them each week and seeing how they've implemented the information and then shifted, and then how clearly they reflect back to me who I am, and then how much it reinforces what I believe and how much it strengthens me. And it's that genuine connection. And we're in a world in which we use money, and that's another big trigger. And I think a lot of us, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like a lot of us empaths have come in with a new program matrix which shifts us out of the money paradigm. And so being in money is like a glitchy thing. It's so glitchy. And that has been one of my biggest glitches as well. And I'm addressing it because I know it's some of your biggest glitches, some of you who watch me, is I want to use my gifts just like anyone. Someone who's an artist becomes an artist, or an actress, or a singer, or a plumber, or a carpenter. Whatever your talents are, you use them and you make money off of them. That's how this world works. But for some reason, if your talents are relational or like life coach kind of stuff, like that is what my talent is. I can tell you that other than writing, even my niece has told me, she's like, Amanda, I can't really figure you out. She's like, I mean, you're multi-talented, but really, when I really watch you, it's not necessarily that you do anything. It's just that when you're there, things feel better. When you're there, things come together better. And then when you work with people one-on-one, everything about life gets better, you know? And it's true, and I feel it, and I know that that's true about me. And I've done it in ways that are unbalanced. When I haven't taken care of myself, it comes through. And you can even see, if you look back at I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but when you look back at my YouTube videos from the beginning, which I've almost deleted several times because it's so vulnerable, because I was in that space of just coming out, I don't carry light the same way that I do now. And it's not that I didn't have the light. It's that I didn't, as soon as the camera was on, and this still happens sometimes, as soon as I was exposing myself in any way, I shut down, I put all these walls up. And I couldn't come through as well as I could one-on-one. And so there's a practice of, as we learn to tune to the internet, which is what most of us are realizing, that's the space to connect. That's where we literally upload our preferences and our ideas, and people find us. And it's like the law of attraction at its most material form that we can understand it, and yet it's so abstract, you know. And even the way that marketing is now geared towards what you're searching for and what you're looking for, it wants to meet your needs. And that's the cool thing about the internet. It wants to meet your needs, because if it gives you what you need, then it's serving its purpose. That's the same as us, this exact same. It's just that we're much more complex than the internet, or it's just a different way of looking at it, I suppose. We're not all mind, we're also heart. And that's where the glitch comes in, is that we're learning to harmonize our heart self with the mind, the internet, the part of us that's linear and has structure and rules and a way that it all works. And for a lot of us empaths, it can be so uncomfortable to upload ourselves into the matrix, this general web matrix, because we have all these glitches about programs and what it means, and being seen and being exposed, and in our DNA, especially if you're a woman, and especially if you have like a soul print of doing this kind of work, it's like the witch fear, like getting burned. The stuff I teach, I would have gotten burned for 100 years ago. So it's this whole, we are really evolving into an entirely different world, an entirely different type of shift. And the more that we can take into consideration that what we're actually doing, what our goal is to meet the needs of the human heart so that the planet can heal. And the only way we can meet the needs of the human heart is to meet our needs, because we can't meet others' needs if our needs aren't met, because then we're in survival mode and all we can think of is us. So we have to know that we're allowed to get our needs met, that our needs are good, that desire's good, and to redefine what they are. So this is my other tip for you. After you really define and narrow down what you actually care about, and it can come from a jaded space like mine does. Just what would you live for? What would you die for? Honestly, this is all I care about. I feel like when I started Chakra Center, I was like, I don't really care about anything else. There is nothing. This sounds kind of horrible, but I remember feeling this way. There's absolutely nothing about the system in the world as I know it up to this point that I have any interest in being a part of. And that was really amazing to realize, but also scary. Once you realize what you do want, or what the bigger picture, like we said, the bigger picture is restoration. We know we need the whole heart. We need to start defining and refining and fine-tuning our actual desires. And that's how we become creators. It's that trial and error. And you'll find when you first, like most people do, go after what they think they want. Like a lot of people in this industry have thought they've wanted lots of followers and then realize when they got lots of followers that that's actually not what they wanted at all. It gave them way too much exposure, way too much people telling them their opinion about their life, way too many people criticizing them, way too many people having expectations of them, way too much of a demand to keep a facade up. So then you realize, okay, that's not actually what I want. I don't want to sell lifestyle porn. I don't want to put myself on a pedestal, because you're always going to get kicked off of it. So, okay, what do I actually want then? I want to be real. I want the real me to come through. But who do I want to connect to, and what do I want to say, and why do I want to say it? And how is it serving me? How is it actually giving me vitality rather than draining my life force? And that's another thing to always remember is what you're focusing on actually bringing you vitality, or is it draining you? Is it moving you towards restoration or more towards separation from yourself? These are really important aspects to follow. Another thing that's important to consider as you're shifting out of the lack matrix and into the abundance matrix is, what is your style of learning? What is your style of implementing? And what is your style of action? We are all very different. And this is another one of those things that if you try to follow someone else's way of doing it and it doesn't work for you, you don't have to beat yourself up like something's wrong with you. And that has been one of the biggest issues in our culture with almost all topics. If you don't have a relationship like Hollywood says you should have a relationship, then you're somehow failing. If you don't feel about church or religion the way some people feel about it, then you're failing. If you don't do business the way other people do it, or have the same drive or way that you work, you're worthless. All of those things are a way of saying someone else's way of doing it is better than me. They know more than I do. I don't know what's good for me. I'm worthless. It's that lack paradigm. It's believing that you can't access light and information and intuition from within you. It's believing that you don't have the answers within you, that someone else needs to give them to you. And it's okay to be in that space. We're all in that space at some point in our lives. But it's impossible to be in that space and be in the paradigm of abundance. It just is. A true abundance and true freedom is knowing that everything you need is within you. And I don't mean that we don't need each other, because we do. It's connection that matters, that ultimately matters, because the deepest unmet need of our heart is connection. Separation is the biggest trauma of the human race. So everything should be moving towards connection, not away from it. So as you're thinking about how you want to say your story to the world, or step forward or shift into whatever new thing you're going to shift into, because just because you're shifting out of the lack matrix doesn't mean you're not a creator. Now you get to start actually taking into consideration what you want to create, and work becomes your life. It's not a separate thing. It's your life. And for me, the more that I've practiced, and I'm just starting to feel good about it, but it's taken me a while to get here, practice loving myself as my work. I am my work. I am Chakra Center. I am, and we are, any people who follow me and the people that I work with who teach me so much and are constantly giving me reflections of this journey for empaths. As I'm perfecting that, as I'm seeing it as my life, it changes everything, because it's not just a job that's on the side that you go and you're obligated to and you give your time to, but you really don't want to, and you can't wait till it's over so you can go do something else you want. And that was one of the things I knew clearly that I didn't want to do. I thought, no matter what I give my time to, I want to do it. I want to not wait to be able to wait to do it. And it doesn't mean every second I feel great, But that's another part of tuning into your intuition. I've really had to, if I want to honor who I am as an empath, I have to honor that if I'm not in an emotional space to do a session with a client, that I have to reschedule with them. Otherwise, it's not fair to me and it's not fair to them. And and the whole integrity line, because in business, you want to obviously have integrity. You want to show up on time. You want to do those things on time. And yet, if you're following your heart and your emotions, in your intuition, sometimes it is not the right timing to do those things, to do those more technical business things, or to try to be there for someone when you are not clear yourself. And so it's balancing all those aspects of you. And my biggest question for myself as I've moved into this realm and used Chakra Center sort of symbolically as my platform for shifting into the abundance matrix, because chakras are all about abundance, I've had to really allow myself to learn and to be vulnerable and to make mistakes and I have almost quit about 500 million times because I had this deep, deep fear of failure. And if anyone were to see me fail, I believed deep down that that meant I was worthless, that I had no right to even be seen on the planet if you fail. It's these weird programmings that don't make any sense really logically, because they all do not consider the fact that we are growing, that we are in transition, that we are becoming. Most systems, if you look at them, treat us like we're robots, and we're not. So I feel like I've gone all over the place with this, and I feel like I talked a little more than I should, but at the same time, I feel like this is exactly what I needed to say and exactly what I needed to communicate. So simplify your life. Get clear about what you actually care about what you actually care about. Simplify things. Make them very, very, very simple. Take into consideration all that you are, and directly and powerfully meet your unmet needs and include them in whatever plans you're making for yourself and whatever you're creating. If you're making your decisions based on what you think you should have, like, oh, I should have a master's degree, or I want to teach, but I need to have a master's degree in order to legitimize anything I say, or I want to do this, but I have to get certified, or if you're feeling yourself jumping to systems, ask yourself, is that what you actually want? Or are you only thinking you need it because that's what the outside world tells you? Because I'm telling you this, you don't need anything but your intuition. And if your intuition tells you to go to school or tells you to do whatever, listen. But it might have a totally different plan for you, and a way easier way as well. A way that's more authentic to you. And that's the question to really ask, is what is authentic to you? What is the most authentic expression of you in your work and in your creation? And you'll find that the more authentic you are, the more you attract people who are authentic and who want to connect with you because you're authentic. And you can get very specific about who and what you want to connect to. It doesn't just have to be, I'm going to go out on the internet and put myself out there for whoever to see. Be very specific about who you want to see you. And that's one of the intentions that I've set, is that anyone who sees my videos, that it would be beneficial for them, even if I trigger them, and even if they don't like me, that it would be beneficial, and that ultimately it would heal them even in ways they didn't expect. And that whether they hate me or not, that they would feel loved, and that it would lead them on a path of feeling more restored, because I see myself in that wound. I know the wound of separation. So ultimately, my intention was to connect to my past self and love my past self, because I feel like one of my regrets that I've had throughout my life is how much self-hatred I've internalized in the past especially. And when I look back, I feel like I've been the most abusive person in my experience. And so partly my YouTube channel and talking and sharing is to be like, yeah, I'm vulnerable. Yeah, I don't have all the answers. Yeah, to some people I might seem completely insane, but this is my truth. And I know there's others out there who connect with this, and surprisingly way more than I even thought. So you're definitely not alone. Your story will resonate with the people that it's meant to resonate with. And the journey to really step into allowing yourself to have what you need when you need it, which is the matrix of abundance, is a journey of self-trust, of trusting that you're loved, of trusting that you're taken care of, that you have access to anything and everything that you need. And you can delete those programs that put a process in front of you. Oh, you can't have this until you go through this process. So you jump through these hoops or pay these amounts of money. You can have it now. You have access to everything now, and it's free and it's unlimited. And how you choose to express it and the processes that you choose to interact with are up to you. None of them are right or wrong. And it's really important to start disassociating with the system as your way of being or as your navigation system, and instead connect to your personal navigation system that includes all that you are, your whole story, your genetic makeup, your energetic strengths and weaknesses, your energy inside you, your DNA knows you. It's your story. And you have access to connect to it, and you have access to meet the needs of you. And nothing outside of you can know what you need as well as you can by tuning in. You're the one who has the most intimate access to how you feel inside and to what you need. So utilize that.